Alrighty, hello and welcome everyone to another Wednesday webinar. I have guest speaker here today, Faith Bailey. Faith, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Faith Bailey, as Monica mentioned. I'm the hiring services manager over here at Ideal Traits. I handle all of our candidate engagement program. I handle the team that kind of handles all the agents with kind of conducting that. I've been here for almost 5 years now, worked in service, a little bit of retention, but now I'm in the engagement program. So excited to be here today, though.
Yes, and what we're going to be going over, and the reason why I thought it was imperative that Faith be here is because she is really the person that handles, like she mentioned, our candidate engagement program, right? And with that comes with setting up interviews. So being that today's webinar, we really wanted to go over conducting effective phone interviews, right? And now this could easily start as early as the first phone call when you just reach out to them, right? But kind of getting into that in just a moment. But what I will say is that we do have a chat feature you can go ahead and utilize to ask any questions throughout the presentation, as well as being able to view a recording of this afterwards. So if you have to leave for whatever reason, don't worry, a recording will be sent to you. But now we can go ahead and get started that I got that out of the way. So excellent. So Faith, with conducting phone interviews, now tell me a little bit about your process, like even before, like, you really set up that interview, right? So like, what is your process with setting that candidate engagement up a little bit and kind of going from there?
Yeah, so first and foremost is actually engaging with the candidate. The very first thing that you want to do, of course, time is of the essence when it comes to these applies, and really also part of the engagement program as well. So that's super important. So the first thing we do always is calling them and thanking them, even for just applying. Market has definitely shifted over the last several years, as we have all noticed and seen. So really just thanking them for applying and going over the assessment with them, of course. That's a big thing. So starting that relationship, that professional relationship early, creating that kind of that bond with them in a way, to say, hey, we really appreciate you taking the time to receive your application and applying to the position. The next step is going to be our assessment. So that's kind of like the pre-work that we do ultimately when it comes to that. It's that the assessment is, of course, the really that first step, the most important part.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But what's really nice about that as well is that you mentioned like reaching out to them. And again, the idea of this is being more competitive than your agency down the road, right? Because I mean, think about it. Think about how many emails we get in a day and how many times they're just like trash, 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 trash.
Yeah.
Right? And you might see one on there that you don't recognize from a candidate's perspective, right? And from coming from this agency. So with that, really giving them that phone call, like Faith mentioned, allows you to have that personal connection with them, right? Again, making you a little different from the agency down the road that just might be, well, if they want to reach out, they know where we'll be at, right? If you have that competitive mentality going into your hiring and recruiting strategy, right? I think it really does help elevate that to the next level, right? So making sure you are putting your best foot forward. Unfortunately, there might be some candidates that don't reciprocate that back, right? But at least, at the end of the day, all is said and done, you can look at yourself and say, hey, I did everything that I can, and I'm continuing to do everything that I can to have a successful hiring journey. And these little steps really do make a difference. Now, Faith, with that being said, if someone like doesn't communicate afterwards, right? Like during like that phone interview time, like what's your kind of process for that?
Yeah, so we spend up to 6 times actually reaching out to them. So definitely persistence is key when it comes to these kind of phone calls. And not everybody has the time for that. And that's exactly where the engagement kind of program came from. Was a lot of our agents maybe didn't have the time for that. So that's where we come into play. So we do those 6 phone calls. And then at that point, and we do emails as well. That's another thing too. Of course, emails is a big thing. So really kind of that persistence with the phone calls is a big thing. And then emails as well. Once that happens, you kind of get through that phase, then they are technically considered a passive employee or passive candidate, because we've now reached out to them between 6 to 8 times, so it really comes back. Now, if they come back, of course, we'll give them a chance. They came back, maybe they had a family member that was ill, or they're transitioning in a move, or, good life happens, we all go through it, but so we also keep that into consideration as well. But I'd say the number one thing it probably is persistence. Just making sure that you keep up on that and be consistent with it too. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. And you actually bring up a really good point about,
Mhm.
continuing that on, because again, when we have the aspect of how many, the number of candidates out there, right, that are looking for jobs compared to the number of jobs out there, right? I
Mhm.
think that there's just such a large influx
Yep.
in, especially in the insurance industry, right? I
Mhm.
mean, we've talked to several agencies that are competing with, their area as well as just population, things like that, right?
Yeah.
So really using this phone interview, I think is so important to really get to know them just a little bit more, right? Before, again, you actually move down to let's set up an hour, investing more time into them, right? Maybe you have some questions about the personality assessment that you want to go over with them, right? That
Mhm.
phone interview, Faith, how long would you say on average those last? Like those first like qualifying ones.
My recommendation is to not go any longer than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I would probably, if you could make it less than 10, that would be probably that would be your overall goal. I definitely would say
Right.
that no longer than 15 though, for sure.
Right. And with this, right, what are you going over? Like, are you going over the job? Are you going over that post hire? Like, what conversations are being talked about during that time?
Yeah, I mean, as far as you're verifying maybe a couple of things on the resume. Of course, that's kind of maybe not necessarily given. I don't want to assume, but
Right.
maybe that's just verifying a couple of past employments, why they're looking for a new job, why are they interested in your particular agency or your office. What attracted them to it when they were reading through that job ad? What was it? A benefit? Was it the salary? Was it maybe the culture you talked about in your job description? What is it that stood out to them? That's going to be important. And then where they maybe where they see themselves. Do they see themselves in a service role? Do they want to maybe start in service and then maybe move to an office manager role? Do they want to start in service and maybe move into sales? What kind of career growth do they have? So
Right.
kind of talking about that, expectations. You could kind of serve it as almost like I call it kind of a mini interview, to be honest with you. So you could go
Yeah.
review the resume, review kind of the job ad, review also the responsibilities and making sure that they can actually fulfill the responsibilities that you want them to fulfill.
Yes.
I think that will get expectations cleared up pretty quickly, and it saves you time. Ultimately, as well, because you don't want to do this phone interview and then get them into the office for that 30 minute, hour-long interview, and
Yeah.
then turns out that they were looking
I
for
actually
someone
have
to
no
stabilize
plans
their
on getting
service.
a license, right? Or
Yeah,
something along that
licensing is
line.
a big thing, right? Maybe not. You found somebody that, like Monica said, that isn't licensed, that doesn't has no idea how to do it. Where do I go? How do I find the study materials? Going over that with them too is going to be important as well. So
Right. Because
yeah.
again, the number of candidates now that don't have that assessment, or sorry, that
Hmm.
don't have that license, right?
Yeah.
It does not even compare to the number of candidates that do, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're going from swimming in the ocean to like a little puddle in my
Hmm.
driveway.
Hmm.
That's honestly the comparison, because again, it's
Yeah.
just most people that get into this industry, it does come from referrals, right? So
Hmm.
in which
Hmm.
case, that's great. We want to make sure that you're
Yeah.
still getting out that opportunity in as many ways as possible. And then again,
Absolutely.
setting up those expectations in that
Hmm.
first phone call. You
Hmm.
know, this is what's required. I know that I believe that you guys go over like hours, things like that, setting up those expectations so that way they know a little bit about
Hmm.
the position, what they apply for,
Yeah.
again, before even setting them up with the agent to really have that more in depth.
Yeah, I think a good example of that, especially as a sales position. So talking about what you would expect of them, if you have a certain number of talk time that you want them to meet on a daily basis, you should talk about that. Making sure that if you have a 3 hour talk time requirement, make sure they know that ahead of time. Make sure they know that before they even come in for the interview. If it's not already in your job ad,
Right.
if there is a certain number of calls that they have to meet, expectations is really going to clear up a lot of that. Kind of any confusion, or blurred lines, anything like that. It's really going to
Yeah.
make sure that also communication with that candidate is clear as well. So
I think that that's really great. And again, so this way you're not blindsiding them at the end of
yeah.
the day, right?
Yep.
Because can you imagine you spend all of this time interviewing, going over everything, and then just
Hmm.
for them to get into the office and say, well, I really don't want to make phone calls.
Or I don't
That's
want a
all this
cold
position
call.
is,
Or I don't want a cold
right?
call. That's the other thing too. Cold calling is a big thing, as I think with sales. But so expectations are big.
Yes, definitely. And so going along with that, right? And kind of, again, giving them the meat and potatoes, right? Don't feel like you have to hold your cards, or like, oh, I don't want to tell them this, right? Because more than likely, that could be the reason why there might be some turnover, right? That could be the reason why they're like, well, you know what, I'm done. Get everything out in the open, all of your, like Faye said, all of your main responsibilities, anything that they might question. And on the flip side, you find that person's like, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to start here. I want to move up. I want to, I'm hungry. I want to succeed for your agency. I want to succeed for myself, which in turn will help your agency, right?
Yeah.
Those are the people that you, from conducting this phone interview, let's move on. Right? The people that are passive might not be responding and things like that. Are you really going to want them in that position where you need them to be hungry, where you need them to keep moving on, right? More than likely not, right? So again, we have the assessment that tells you about their personality. But this phone interview stage is really where you can ask questions about a little bit about them, right? So going hand in hand with that, then I brought up the assessment earlier about some questions. Now, I work in customer service here at Ideal Trade, so we often get asked the question about their assessment results, right? Well, they didn't score too high in their problem solving, like, should I be concerned? Number one, what I will say is that the Ideal Traits assessment is just supposed to give you like a little insight to their personality, right? There's so many different factors that go into it. Their environment, their time, where their headspace is at currently, right? So many different factors. So if they're just like rushing through it, right? Think different things, or maybe they just had a really long, hard day at work and they're trying to think about themselves just wasn't there right then, right? So this phone screen time is a great time to go over, like, again, those main questions that you had, or really any concerns as well. Getting all of that in the open again. Now, from their perspective, right? I had a question about this, right? Or this reference, like, I'm not too sure about it. Elaborate on it. You should feel 100% like I'm getting to know this candidate even more, compared to at the end being like, well, I still don't have my answer about this, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now,
I think you bring up a good point. Not to cut you off, Monica. Problem solving, I think, is a great example. Ask them about it. Hey, I know when you took the assessment, because the candidates, obviously did take the assessment. So, hey, I noticed you scored in on out of 15. Were you in a rush? There's, you can ask them about that, and they'll be open about it. I'm sure.
Yeah. And the questions were just super complex, and my brain was done for the day.
Exactly.
I did my best.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. You did your best. You put an effort to it. You didn't just like go from one to the other, right? Again, or maybe they'll be completely, hey, I saw you got a 15 out of 15. Like, tell me a little about that. I Google the answers, right? Oh, okay. So this is the type of person now that likes to get from point A to point B. They don't mind putting in that research, maybe cutting a few corners, right, to be the best. Okay, great. So this is where you could go over those different questions to, again, just better get to know, better get to understand them, because that's really one of the most important parts of making sure that they stay engaged during that process, right? Now, I'm sure that you probably just ended things like after that phone screen, because it's like maybe those expectations weren't there, or maybe, they just didn't meet the requirements that the agent was looking for.
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point too. One thing that I will mention, and Monica, you might be mentioning this later on down the road, so I might jump ahead a little bit, but allowing for questions at the end. Similar to how you're interviewing them, they're also interviewing you as well. So there might be questions that they ask where maybe that there's a cultural fit that it's not working. That also leaving time for that is also a good indicator, depending on what questions they're asking, or what they're asking about. That could also be a good indicator of how they're going to fit into the agency as well, or how motivated they are, anything like that. So keep that in mind too. That's also going to be a big thing as well. So I would save time for questions at the end. That's going to help you, I think, also learn a little bit even more about the candidate, like I said, because depending on the question that they ask, could be the right answer, or the right question. It could also be the wrong question. So just keep that in mind too.
And with getting this interview set up as well, I will say, how many times do we look at a phone number that we don't recognize and send it to voicemail, right?
Yeah.
They might be in the same, predicament where it's like, hey, I don't know this number. Like, I'm at work, or I'm at an appointment right now. Like, okay, it's not someone I know. I'll get
Right.
back to them. Leave them a
Right.
quick voicemail. Again, as simple as, hey there, I'm such and such from the such and such agency. I'm actually the owner. I wanted to personally reach out to you. Thank you for applying. I'm not too sure if you saw an assessment that got sent to you, but we do just ask that you take that, and then from there we can follow up. But hey, hope that you have yourself an amazing rest of your day. Chat with you soon. Done.
Absolutely.
Great. Next
So quick.
person, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you are the type of agency that might be hiring remote, let's say, right? More than likely you might get more candidates because you are now hiring throughout the entire United States, right? You don't have time to call 200 candidates, let's say, right, that applied
Right.
to your
Right.
agency. So one great method for this then, okay, how do we limit this down, right? There's this many candidates I'm hiring throughout the entire United States, great, like, but I don't have that time. You can then say, well, now I'm only reaching out to the candidates that have taken the assessment, right? Because again, you have that influx to kind of work with compared to, let's say, the agency that's maybe getting the few applies, right? And just, I want to add in really quick, we did have a chat asking about views and things like that on ads. So I will touch base on that a little bit. You know, I will say content is one of the most important things with creating that ad, right? So your candidates have to like it. So I will say you can schedule a time with someone from support to take a view, look over your ads, just directly through your Ideal Traits account. Or you can even chat in and we can take a look over it, offer those recommendations, right? Maybe it's the job ad or the job description that's maybe not concise or leaves questions to be answered, right? Because again, when you're setting up this interview, the idea is to get more information about the candidates because they now have information about you, right? So your job ad should really go over and, you know, laying everything out, right? Those expectations and things like that. If there are more intricate things that you'd like to discuss during the interview process, that phone call is exactly where you want to do it. But still making sure that we're setting them up for success by having concise job ads that really speak to the candidate that you want. So, and then again, from there, now you have your great ad, you know, you're posting it great, being able to then really find that candidate that's going to work best for your agency. Because the last thing that we want to do is like, hey, you know what, I'm just looking for a body, but next thing you know, they end up leaving in 2 months because they don't have the right personality for your agency. And that's really where Ideal Traits can help out with. And then as well as we do have a product called our video interview tool. Now this is really great because for the agent, again, like let's say if you have 200, I don't have enough time to call every single one and then set up that interview. The video interview tool will actually send them like about 3, I believe, like anywhere from 1 to 5 questions, going over whatever you would like within that time. And they send, you know, as easy as grabbing your phone right quick, they answer the questions, get submitted to you, and you can view it from your Ideal Traits account. And then again, send them more, further move them along, but now you have an idea of what their tone sounds like. You have an idea how they would be on camera, right? If that's something that's required. And just being able to see that presentation skills, because at the end of the day, that is what they're doing. They're presenting themselves to you because again, you have this probably awesome, you know, position that you're looking to apply for, but making sure that they're fit and making sure all of those different things lines up, because the last thing that we want is to be like, I hired this person, didn't really know a whole lot about them, and they didn't want to make 200 calls a week, and then they left. Okay, like, is that something that you talked about during the phone interview process? I sure didn't. So that's just, it's just a couple of examples of making sure that we're being as transparent as possible. Now, Faith, if you have an agent that needs help with those questions, what do you typically refer them? In regards to
or if they don't even know what to ask. So I always so one thing that I don't think enough people know about is our help center. Actually, it has so many different articles and videos that are in there, and there's a list of actually questions in there. I think there's 50 interview questions that our learning and development member Mara went through and wrote for us. And then there are actually assessment questions based on their result as well. So whether that is you calling them after they've completed that assessment and asking it, if it's a sales leader asking, specific questions, use those to your advantage. And then also in the help center, like I mentioned, there's 50 general interview questions in there as well. So just to kind of give you an idea of what questions you should be asking. We use those here. So yeah, it's helpful, that's for sure. So
Right.
help center right inside of your account in the top left hand corner, I think is.
I was gonna say, how do I get there? And I actually
Yes.
already have it pulled up, so I was just gonna go ahead and share it with you guys right quick. So let me just
Perfect.
share my screen really quick. Okay, excellent. So as you can see, here's my demo account for Ideal Traits. This little help tab right up here, or you can even do it from the help center, right? So as Faith mentioned, it's selecting help center for peer. And then you do get all of our related articles, right? There's tons of information about candidate engagement, understanding their personalities. But like I said, you have a very specific need for interview questions. So all I'm going to do, interview question.
And even as you're typing, Monica, it'll start pulling up articles though, even as you're typing. You don't have to hit enter. There's so many different articles that are already going to start popping up because of the word that you're typing into.
So even just the interview, and then as you can see, you get the relating ones that have that. After hitting the search option, that's when you would then get all of the articles laid out, so then you can scroll. But like Faith mentioned, we do have, specific ones for sales, general EEOC, because we want to make sure that you guys are also conducting safe phone interviews, because asking those offensive questions, it is a violation. So we just want to make sure that you guys are being safe and keeping those candidates that apply safe as well. So we do have EEOC compliant questions to make sure that no one is being offended. These are all approved, and just tons of different ones. If you want to get ones like she mentioned for specific personalities, we have those as well. So perfect. Stop sharing my screen. Excellent. But yes, that is one of the great resources that we use, and I even recommend to agents that are like, I just don't know what to ask them.
Everybody has been there at one point or another. Everybody has been there.
Exactly, and that's really what we try to help out with, right? Just being able to assist with this hiring journey and make it as seamless as possible. So I will say that there are a lot of factors that go into this hiring journey, but definitely this interview process is more so kind of on that back end, instead of, I know in previous webinars we kind of talked about the beginning stages, things like that, creating those effective job ads, right? But yes, definitely this interview stage will really allow to then have a more seamless process for getting them in the office and being able to move further along from there.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, that is really all I had. I'll go ahead and see if we do have any questions really quick. Like I mentioned, Vanessa did chat in asking about, we have posted it twice with no applications. Do you have any tips, recommendations for posting jobs to reduce applicant amount? Again, I would definitely recommend reaching out to our client service team, client success team, just to ensure that, number one, your content is good, right? If candidates are seeing ads that, compared to the next one that they scroll to, right, that they do get that information answered, more than likely they might just keep scrolling. So we want to make sure that content is there in a competitive aspect. So I would say that's the first one. The second one is going to be your budget, right? So setting up your competitive budget. So this includes sponsoring to Indeed, right? If you're in an area that, let's say, has 200 insurance jobs posted, right? You might need more exposure. So that's not something, so does it cost extra to have someone review the content? Great question. So if you chat in or schedule a call, we'll do it for free. Now, if you're the type of agent that doesn't have time for that, we do have a job ad review that you can select from after posting the ad. It'll get sent to one of our members on our team, and she'll do a deep dive going over the market research for that, conducting a more in-depth report and just emailing it back to you. So if that's something that you prefer, we do have that available for purchase after posting an ad. Or like I mentioned, if you just chat in using your Ideal Traits account, go to the home section, you can select send us a message, and then from there, help writing posting a job. It's like I've said this, to agents before. Help writing plus posting a job, and then if there are articles there that you'd like to check out, great. Or if you'd like to chat with a live representative, that's how you'd be able to do so.
Yeah.
But great question, Jenny. Were there any other questions? Okay, so like I mentioned, so we have our content for one of them. We have our campaign budget. That was the other C. And then we have campaign budget, content, faith. What's the last C that I'm missing?
Compensation.
Compensation, yes. So we want to make sure that we do have an accurate compensation plan. So, and this is where conducting market research might be very beneficial for you, right? If you go on Indeed, you can easily type in your title for your job ad, right? So like, let's say insurance sales or insurance customer service, right? You can easily type that in there as well as your zip code. And there'll be a salary option that you can see the minimum, the average, and then on the higher end, right? And that's what candidates can select from when picking their job opportunities. So again, I'm not here to say, well, you need to pay more, right? But understanding what your competitors are paying is a benefit in respect to, okay, if that's what they're paying, maybe I need some more non-compensation benefits, maybe going over the different competitive bonuses that we have, or all of those, fun, different, unique ways that just make you stand out from the agency down the road.
Yeah, keep in mind too, every agency is unique. So the daily incentive programs that you reward your sales team with, if they hit 100 calls in a day, that's unique to your agency. That's a benefit for you guys. So don't be afraid to have a little bit of a longer list of benefits because the candidates want to see that too.
Right.
So just keep that in mind too. Or if I just talked to an agent the other day, they do summer hours. So from Memorial Day to Labor Day, they are off at 2 p.m. on a Friday. Like that's a benefit. You only work 8 to 2. That's a benefit for them. So keep those in mind where they might be specific to your agency. So add it
on, Kate. You're telling me that candidates don't like to see a lot of responsibilities and requirements listed, that they'd rather see a lot of benefits listed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
believe it or not, yes.
Right. And, I say it in a sarcastic way because we work with agencies every single day, right? So from our perspective, we do have a good amount of knowledge as to what candidates are looking for. So again, just consider, either chatting in with us or reviewing your job ad, right? Ask yourself, do I have any questions after reading this from the candidate's perspective? Obviously, being the owner, you have all of the knowledge. I can ask you and you can elaborate, right? But if this is the first impression that they're going to get for you to be able to set up that phone interview, right? We want to make sure that we're getting all of that information there effectively.
Absolutely. Good point.
Excellent. Well, if there are any other questions, we'll go ahead and take them now. But I do just want to give a quick shout out again to Faith for joining us today. If you are an agent that is looking to be a part of our candidate engagement program, please feel free to reach out to us. Let us know. I'd be more than happy to get you over to someone just to discuss what it is that we do more in depth, talking about that. And then who knows, you might even be meeting with Faith to just go over what it is that you're looking for. You get 2 free custom job ads where, again, we really dissect what it is that you're looking for your agency, what makes you unique, and making sure that candidates understand your great position that you're hiring for.
Thanks, Monica. Appreciate it. It was always a great time. Always a good conversation with you as well.
Yes, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Faith. And hey, thank you so much, everyone else, for joining today. If you do have any questions, again, I will be available in our intercom chat, so you can use your Ideal Trades account to chat in there. But hope you all have yourself a lovely rest of your day, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys on our future webinars. But have a great one.
See ya.